What's going on, fellas? Belair here. Crazy first day of the playoffs with some excellent series. And as we move towards the final day here, I wanted to take you through who I think is one key player, one X factor from each of our top 6 teams. And I want to start with Carmine Core and Atow, series leading 5 goals here against NRG as they move through that upper quarterfinals there. A fastest player at the major, which isn't very surprising for Atow. The demo numbers is something that he's been hitting for a long time as well. He's one of 2 players to be moving at a boost speed more than 43% of the time, tied with a player like LJ, who has also been totally zipping around the field for ultimates there. And despite this speed, bottom 10 at time spent at 0 boost. So Atow has been doing a great job of maneuvering about the pitch in a way that allows him to not only sustain speed throughout the games and series, but also doing that in an efficient way. And you might be asking yourself, how is he going about doing that? Well, he's actually number 1 in small pads collected per game. So you would think a player like Naupo, who's a hot commodity right now, especially offensively, he's consuming a ton of boost and staying at a very, very high pace throughout his games. One of the fastest players, if not the fastest player in the world. But one of the ways in which he's sustaining that pace is by collecting a lot of 100 pads, which of course put your teammates in a position to need to be sufficient with pennies and things of that nature. But Atow is not putting his teammates in that position. Of course, Drali has been unlocked for them offensively this season, and a helping piece of making that happen is for Atow to be collecting a ton of small pads. Vatira, of course, one of the best third men in the game, is able to maneuver and be so effective on the defensive end by collecting his own big back pads as well. So Atow doing the little things very, very well, and so impressive defensively, especially within the flow of the game, not just necessarily as a goal line defender. But I talked about this when we were looking at some of the tape the other day against Falcons, where his defense in transition, being able to cut out plays as the first man coming back, as opposed to relying on a defender to leave the net and put them in a tough position. Atow is great at, backflipping and getting back into the play and cutting off the play as the first man coming back. And furthermore, his ceiling defense has been super impressive as well. Teams try and go high on them, and he's just so good at getting up onto the sidewall and then kind of hovering from the ceiling there and making life difficult. And finally here for Atow, 1 of 9 players above 2 demos per game. We talked about that last season. You can go back and look at some of the stuff from last year's World Championship, where he was a top 3 player, if I recall correctly, in demos per game. That's been a calling card of his back to the Team Liquid days. So no surprises there for Atow, who still is ripping around the field. And he was unable to get involved assisting today. Like we said, 5 goals against NRG, no assists. But again, those are really impressive numbers given the fact that NRG are playing a very, very stripped down gameplay here, where they're not bleeding a lot of goals, and they're not scoring a lot either. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. But before we do so, let's talk about the ultimates. Biggest surprise of the tournament for me. Not that they find themselves here. That doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is the form in which they've found themselves here. Running over Falcons, coming back against Vitality. Really, really impressive. And we're going to talk about Chronic as our player here. But before we do so, shout out to Sad Jr. That's a tough sentence to say. Shout out to Sad Jr. for being really, really impressive in not only getting this Ultimates team over the hump in sweeping Falcons and beating them in a Game 3 overtime. Credit where it's due to the players, but Sad Jr., I even think about, they go down 0-2. Vitality totally have their number. They can't break out. First Killer and Chronic are getting in each other's ways, leading to easy goals for the Golden Swarm there, for the Frenchmen. and Sad Jr. calls his timeout, and immediately coming out of it, they have just a great kickoff to get them on the board early. And then they had a nice one against Falcons too. So Sad Jr. is definitely earning his paychecks. But Chronic here, like we said, they go down 0-2 against Vitality, who were in, I thought, the best form of any team coming into today. And Chronic and the Ultimates are scoreless through those first two games, cannot get on the board. Chronic opens it up in game 3 with a full field, basically sidewall skim into the net. Super impressive. Then he gets a steal that leads to a goal there to put them up against Vitality. And then he finds LJ in the midfield on another transition break for a third goal. Game 4, he gets a huge bump on the third to put them up 2-0. I mean, I think that game 3 was the biggest game of Chronic's season so far. In this series was certainly, I might be forgetting, them running over strictly business in split 1 or something like that. But as far as given the context, this is the most impressed I've been with Chronic all season long here. Really was the question mark for me as to whether or not he was going to get integrated here. And then in game 6, Zen scores this full field snipe. It's kind of like a broken down play just outside Vitality's box, and First Killer encroaches a little farther than he should. And to be fair, it doesn't look like Zen has the lead up to get the power on this kind of shot, but he sends it all the way down, and you immediately, it's like the gravity is sucked out of the room, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is how Vitality are going to climb back into this. And then immediately Chronic, answers with a goal of his own. So he was just huge for them. Ultimates have been the best counter-attacking team out of the entire field so far. I think that's fair to say. Falcons have obviously shown holes in their defense, holding a really high back line there. But Ultimates totally exposed them in that, and they've been so good at bumps that open up space in transition. Third men got to keep their head on a swivel. They have just been so good at doing that. And Chronic playing at a high level has completely unlocked what First Killer and LJ are allowed to do on the pitch when they're trying to break out and go fast and get going in transition and looking upfield to see if the goal is open and kind of find those opportunities to strike when the defense doesn't think they're going to. Knowing that Chronic is playing at a high level, knowing that he is a competent third man who also is now hopping into the scoring here. We talked in our video yesterday about how Chronic had one of the lowest scoring outputs of any player in our field of 64 here. So for him to have this kind of a series in this moment after not having a good tournament offensively up until this point is super impressive, and he's empowering LJ and First Killer in a huge way on the pitch here. Let's move on to TRK, number 1 in boost per minute, nearly 30 above Naopo. Isn't that surprising? We talked about how Naopo has just been drinking from the fountain, as it were, proverbially. And TRK has pulled that off by being a small pad merchant here. He's 2nd in small pads collected, 6th in small steals. Really, really similar to a player like Atow, who him and TRK are connected on those metrics there. TRK and Roas, 2nd and 3rd in time spent supersonic. This Falcons team is going, and we've talked about how it's kind of bit them in the heels here a couple of times, allowing some easy ones to go in transition there. But what are you going to do? And another thing about that Falcons high line is they like to sustain and keep possession. That's been huge for them. And statistically, TRK has been their most common player who spends the most time back for them. He's most often their third man. And if you want to keep a super high line and sustain offense like that, I think one of the things that can kind of be a monkey wrench to that offensive system is allowing yourself to be bumped and demoed as the third. And we just talked about how Chronic was super effective. Ultimates were super effective at disrupting what Falcons were trying to do in their flow. But one thing that stood out to me is TRK is currently sustaining the least demos per game of any of our 64 players. So if you're going to be playing that high line, we can throw out some outliers like Ultimates here, but if he's gonna be high line, he's your third. The fact that he is almost never getting demoed is overwhelmingly impressive. And I'll check my notes here real quick. I think, yeah, only 4 players so far are sustaining under 1 demo taken per game, and TRK kind of leads the pack there. Look, he took some awful challenges in that series against Ultimates. I think about one where if attacking, he's in Ultimates right corner, top right corner, and he tries to take this challenge where he kind of flubs into the ball, and not only does he lose the challenge, but it actually speeds the ball up. First Killer uses that. This is that play where he like cut through the midfield and got a very easy third goal to sink them. I think that was in game 2, if I recall correctly. But clean that up, nearly perfect against GK today, who couldn't get anything going. Had a really heads-up bump in game 4 that put them up 3-0. So for TRK, it's just about cleaning things up like that. He's had a couple great passes into the midfield as well here, but if they can continue to own that challenge game, which really is the key to allowing them to sustain that offense that they love to do, that's what gets Falcons to that tip-top peak there. Let's talk about Yan. Scored or assisted on half the goals today against Twisted Minds, 17 huge saves. Shout out to Lost, who had just a worldie of a performance today. MVP by far in my eyes. And Yan in that series, Lost needed it. Lost needed to be doing that because Yan was an imperfect striker today. He missed an easy double in game 2. He had a weak shot where he really had an opening, but he just kind of didn't. He was at a weird angle and tried to like put the ball on target, and it was too weak and got saved. And that led to a transition. Luckily, it wasn't a score. But that imperfect striking, this is where my concerns have always been about a player like Yan, where he and Furia as a unit are burying people in the Swiss. Of course, they went a little deeper than 3-0 this time around, but it is once you get into these game 7s, can Yan consistently put together high-level performances as a striker? And I mean, he has to. He's their leader. And a couple other notes that I had about him. Tied for first in goal participation at 77%. Shout out First Killer. If he can't get it going against Vitality, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And even in that first series, when they played Vitality in the Swiss, they got absolutely run over. Yan's their leader. He's going to have to get it together here. He is, luckily though, assisting on just about as many goals as he is scoring for that goal participation. So it's not this super heliocentric, I'm scoring everything, just kind of give me the rock and get out of the way energy. He is getting his teammates involved at an elite level. He's the most forward guy on this team by a pretty sizable gap. Trufinho is actually the player who spends the second most time forward here. And you know, the aerial challenges is one way in which he has just been killing dudes, especially in like that Chiefs series. Not that that really mattered, but he had 2 or 3 where he's going high. I can't remember who was on the call. It might have been Jorby or a Chiefs who was calling it out. But he's going high and getting dunks, and that's leading to easy goals, which makes sense. He's one of 5 players who's spending 9+% of the time in the high air. So Yan is that dude. He's up there. Just going for worldies, softening up defenses so that his teammates can help break them down along the way. One last thing, I don't think the 1v1 loss matters, but you hate to see him go down 0-3, and then you hate to see him come all the way back and then lose in game 7. That won't play into it here at all, but GG's to Moxie. That was an exciting series, even if ones aren't typically my bag here. Finally, no, we got 2 more players. Let's talk about BeastMode. He's got to come online offensively here. He's getting fed big boosts. He's collecting the 5th or 6th most. I wish I would have wrote that in my notes. Big boosts out of anybody in our field here. And what do we know BeastMode for? It is these high-level, mechanical, precise, cutting plays in which he is taking solo efforts to beat one, beat two, and score himself, or break down the defense in a way that makes it easy for Daniel or Atomic to clean things up. And he just hasn't been doing that. I mean, we've talked yesterday about how NRG are holding teams to almost no goals, but they're also scoring almost no goals. I feel like something's gotta give here, especially they're playing Falcons tomorrow. Falcons are scoring the second most goals per game. They're almost up at 3 goals per game. They're taking the most shots, above 10. And those numbers are obviously going to fall when they play against NRG, but they are so good at attacking and also the fakes. Like, I just feel like they're going to get a lot of bites at the apple. You're going to have to sustain more offense here, in my opinion, if you want to beat Falcons more times than you don't here. And for me, the key to that is BeastMode, who has been pretty unsuccessful so far in scoring. I think he's all 3 of their players are in like the bottom 20th percentile here on goals per game, and I think BeastMode's scoring like 0.59 goals per, which is just not going to get the job done. We talked yesterday about how they've done this before, but even at the World Championship last season, he was up at 0.78 or 0.84 or something like that. Those goals kind of need to be here today. And a lot of the big boosts that he was getting today, it was chasing balls down after heavy first touches. You just need, beast mode. It's nitpicky, but at this point of the competition, you kind of have to be nitpicky. And I feel like he's a ways away from, the major winning caliber that we've seen him at previously. And, yeah, he's just going to have to pump those numbers up if they want to keep Falcons honest here. They're probably going to give him a couple of easy looks, so maybe Beast Mode can break the seal early and get it going. Daniel continues to shoot a lot, but has struggled to score, although he has been assisting at a pretty good clip there. I think he was 1 of 12 today or something like that. And again, it's not like basketball where every shot you're necessarily trying to score. A lot of what Daniel is doing is putting shots on the net to kind of punt and chase and, make the defense scramble, or just take a shot to keep them honest or break the defense down. So I know that it's not Daniel's shooting terribly, but I think he's at 8% shooting on the event or something like that. So Beast Mode's got to pick up a little slack in my eyes. And let's wrap up here with ExoTiiK. He's actually tied with Zen in goal participation and tally, which is that goals and assists combination, which is how you get goal participation. So a little bit of a redundancy there as I'm talking it through. He's lit it up for vitality. We talked about this previously. Hit that big shot against NRG in the Swiss where Monkey Moon feeds it to him, just a dart of a pass. And then ExoTiiK, perfect first touch, keeps his momentum, rotates his car for this double right off the top of the crossbar. It was a thing of beauty. One of the goals of the tournament so far. He was instrumental when they beat the Pulp out of Furia. He led the series, 6 goals on 10 shots, incredible efficiency. And that efficiency is carried. I think he's top 10. I think he's 7th in shooting percentage. So the fact that he's doing that while being so high in the goal participation for a team that is shooting 10 shots per game on the dot, super impressive for ExoTiiK. And he was so good at keeping Furia pinned in their own offensive half. I talked about that in a previous video here. But he really got quiet offensively in the back half of that Ultimate Series. Kind of faded out of the notes that I was taking, which I thought was notable. And if they beat Furia tomorrow, which we saw them really run them over, it's definitely not going to be the exact same series here. Furia are going to figure some things out. But if they beat Furia, they have Carmine Core after that, and we obviously know that Carmine have had Vitality's number all season. They've played 3 times in the regular season during the online split, and they got killed in 2 of those. And they went to game 7 in one of them as well. So what is the difference between the 2 times that they get killed and the 1 time that they're close? If you look at it, it's ExoTiiK, man. In those 2 series combined, when they got run over, he had 3 goals total. And in the time that they went 7, he had 6 goals on the series. So if ExoTiiK is going to show up offensively and be that running mate that Zen really needs here to open up space and keep defenses honest, Zen's gonna take up a lot of gravity. It's gonna be a lot of focus put on him, but it's very easy to put the focus on him if a player like ExoTiiK does not have it going. Monkey Moon is still like very, very good offensively, but as far as like strikes on his own and generating his own offense, Monkey Moon's generating a lot of offense that leads to pressure and good looks and looks for his teammates. ExoTiiK has to get it rolling here. So it's actually it for me, guys. I'm so excited about tomorrow. I feel like we got 6 excellent teams who are all rounding into form here. Doesn't feel like there's any imposters who are kind of floating around. So I'm pumped to see how this goes. What we got: Furia against Vitality. I'm probably going to pick Vitality in that one. And then in the bottom half, we have NRG against Falcons. I'm going to give a slight edge to NRG just because I don't feel I didn't feel like they played terribly against Carmine Corps. And I do think that the offense is going to kind of engage here a little bit. And if there's one thing, offense or defense, like if I was ranking the 6 teams we have remaining, I feel like the Falcons defense has been the thing that's given me quite a bit of concern here. So I'm going to take NRG and Vitality, and then that's going to give us, oh my goodness, that's going to give us the intra-regionals, isn't it? Where it's going to be Carmine Corps against Vitality. I don't know. It's going to be about the form that they're looking at. But just for the point of making this fun, let me rub my crystal ball here and give me Carmine Corps, and I think they're looking good and ramping up. And Vatira hasn't even really had it going offensively. And then on the other side of that, give me Ultimates. Give me a Carmine Ultimates final. And these first ones are always weird. So you know what? I've talked so much trash. Give me Ultimates lifting the trophy here. I feel like they're in great form. Really feels like First Killer is into it and animated, and Chronic has been the question mark here. LJ is back to World Championship form from the previous World Championship here. Always has been a killer at these lands, and if Chronic has been the question mark, and how First Killer is going to kind of lead here. So let's throw the bracket out. Give me Ultimates. Sorry for doubting you guys. Can't wait to catch you guys on the pitch tomorrow. Thank you for giving me some time out of your day, and until next time, guys, take it easy.